I notice that there's always a group of my friends who always criticize what I'm saying and not even try to understand where I'm coming from. And I've always wondered how to deal with that. I mean, I want to listen to what they're saying, but they're not understanding they're not trying to listen to what I'm saying. So what would you do in that situation?
I'm going to answer that very briefly. Okay. There's a line in the New Testament that's relevant to that. Do not cast pearls before swine. And what that means is that if people are not listening to you, stop talking to them. And that is the best piece of advice that I can give you. And what happens is that if you stop talking to people who aren't listening to you and start watching them instead, they will tell you what they're up to. But so if you have things to say, say them, but you find people that will listen, talk to them. The ones who aren't listening, pull back. Because you're devaluing what you have to say by offering it to an audience that does nothing but reject it. And that's a good guideline to life in general. So, pull back. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about friendships for a minute. Here's how you know if someone's your friend. A, you can tell them bad news, and they'll listen. They won't tell you why, you're stupid and why that bad thing happened to you and how something worse happened to them once and, derail the whole conversation. You can actually tell them bad news, and they'll listen. So that's a good thing. And then, this is a weirder thing. You can tell them good news, and they'll help you celebrate. And that's a really good way of deciding who you should have around you. Because if you have someone around you, something good happens to you and you're kind of afraid to even admit it because, God, something good happened to you. It's like, you let that be known and it'll certainly be taken away. So, you come out and you sort of tell someone half-heartedly that something good happened to you and they give you a whack and then talk about, the great thing that happened to them 3 years ago. Or worse, the great thing that happened to someone that they knew 3 years ago. It's like, go away from that person. They're not helpful to you. And they're not helpful to themselves either. And so you want to surround yourself. You got to think about this. You got to surround yourself with people who want the best for the best part of you. You can hang around with weasels and losers that are trying to pull you down to justify the fact that they're spiraling downhill as well. And the upside of that is you don't have to have any responsibility and you can all whine about how wretched life is, so that's pretty attractive. But I would say it's also a bad medium to long-term plan. And so it's acceptable and desirable to try to surround yourself with people who are facilitating your development. And you might say, well, I've got people around, I know them well, they're not doing that well and they don't fit into that category. It's like, what's your point? What are you going to do with them exactly? If they'll listen and cooperate with you and move towards a better future, great. If they don't pay any attention and they keep doing the same damn things over and over and they're not going anywhere and it's painful, then maybe the proper thing to do is say, you just have your misery. I'll go off and have my life. And maybe you'll wake up at some point in the future and think that's a better way of being. Because just putting up with it is, they call that enabling, right? You put up with that sort of behavior, you're providing tacit consent for it and even tacit approval. It's like, it's a bad idea. You have, I would say, both the right and the responsibility to surround yourself with people who are good for the best part of you. And that's not the same as, I don't have to elaborate on that. You can figure out what that means.
Is remove the toxic people in your life wholly good advice? Well, no, I wouldn't say it's wholly good advice because no single piece of advice could be considered as wholly good, except perhaps for tell the truth. I think that one might be outside that rule of thumb. It depends very much on what you mean by toxic and also who's doing the judgment with regards to toxicity. My sense is that you should surround yourself with people who genuinely want the best for you, or perhaps more specifically, genuinely want the best for the best part of you. And if the people around you are not supporting you in your endeavors, and they put you down and they punish you for your virtues, or even punish you too intensely for your faults, and fail to reward you when you're doing what you should be doing, and fail to engage in reciprocal interactions, that there comes a point where you would be better off finding someone who is actually on your side. And that can even be the case with family members, although, of course, that's a very difficult decision to make. But sometimes people do have the misfortune of being tangled up with family members who are operating in a manner that's so counterproductive to their health that it's better for them, despite the pain, to cease communication with them. And sometimes, paradoxically enough, that can also facilitate communication, because sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand before people are willing to undergo the serious self-consideration that would precede any real transformation. So, but I would say, even if you don't like the idea of removing the toxic people in your life, you should certainly endeavor to surround yourself with the sorts of people that you would want to surround someone that you regarded as your friend or loved one. So you need to extend the same courtesy to yourself, especially to the part of yourself that's striving upward, that you would to someone that you cared for. So okay. What do I think of the phrase, diversity is our strength? Well, I think it's a slogan. And the word slogan is derived from the Welsh, two words, sluag, S-L-U-A-G-H, and gairm, G-H-A-I-R-M. And sluag gairm is the battle cry of the dead. So the problem with that sort of slogan is that it replaces independent thought. And it's certainly possible that, quote, diversity is a strength, end quote. But the question is, what the hell do you mean by diversity? And if the idea is that diverse modes of approaching situations necessarily emerge because you've gathered people together who are different in whatever group identity marker happens to be the privileged one at the moment, to use the postmodernist language, there's no indication whatsoever that that's going to produce diversity of strategic plan, for example. So it's an empty phrase, and it's a dangerous phrase, because diversity can be a weakness just as much as it can be a strength. So, I think it's a slogan, and I don't like slogans very much. So, do you have any practical advice?
It's still on. It's just the camera turned off for some reason.
Do you have any practical advice? It's still on audio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I have all this new technology here, guys, and sorry about that. We're still working out the bugs. I bought new cameras and new lighting and all of that, and it does strange things that we don't understand yet. And so it looks like I'm back on. So, do you have any practical advice on how I can improve my ability to concentrate and pay attention to the world around me? Well, I have some practical advice for that. The first piece of practical advice, often the devil's in the details, but often some practical advice is, well, regulate your habits. Try to get up at approximately the same time each morning. I would recommend that you get up approximately when other people get up. So that would be something in the neighborhood of 7:30 or 8 in the morning, or perhaps earlier, or perhaps a little bit later. But you want to stabilize that, because your circadian rhythms operate more, fluidly, and your mood is likely to be regulated better if there's islands of stability in your daily routine.